Hey, what's going on, everybody? And welcome to the TJ Knows Wrestling Podcast. I am the host, TJ Jones. And on today, we're going to be talking about Hulk Hogan. Okay, we're going to be profiling Hulk Hogan today. We all know how special Hulk Hogan and how important Hulk Hogan was to the world of professional wrestling. And before we get started, just want to go ahead and give you a quick rundown of Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan was born Terry Bollea on August 11th of 1953 in Augusta, Georgia. Okay, and we all know Hulk Hogan has been one of the most premier champions in the world of wrestling. He was a six-time WCW champion. He was a six-time WWF champion. He also had one. He was a one-time tag team champion with Edge. So Hulk Hogan. I mean, what else needs to be said? I mean, just the name alone. I mean, it just stands alone. I mean, I don't care if you are the biggest wrestling fan walking around here, or you're just a casual fan, or a person that probably never watched wrestling at all. You know exactly who Hulk Hogan is. Hulk Hogan. He started out. We know that he mostly started out back in the WWF, which was owned by Vince McMahon Sr. Vince McMahon Sr. was the one that actually gave him the name of Hulk Hogan. You know, that he gave him that name because he wanted him to have an Irish last name. And Hulk Hogan started out in, WWF. He started out as a villain. He was managed by Classy Freddie Blassie, a very legendary manager, and he did like dastardly deeds. Then he left the WWF and he ended up having a little brief stint in Japan. And from Japan, he went to the AWA. And in the AWA, he still was carrying his whole heel persona. And, but the thing about it was Hulk Hogan was just so larger than life. I mean, 6'7", over 300 pounds. I mean, he was jacked up, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of the people, they just started to gravitate to him due to his charisma and his physique. So the AWA ended up turning him from being a dastardly heel to a babyface, and he started to, kind of separate himself from Classy Freddie Blassie. And I know what you were probably thinking, how is it that Vince McMahon Sr. Had him, and then he ended up leaving, going to different places? I'm pretty sure it had a lot to do with just money and payday and stuff like that. And also, you have to keep in mind, I mean, these were the territory days, and for some of the younger viewers out there that probably don't understand how territory days work, I know you probably are dealing with a world today where there's supposed to be like one premier wrestling organization, but it didn't work like that back in the day. Territory days was comprised of different wrestling organizations throughout the country. So, a lot of these wrestlers used to, go to different territories where they can make money. And then you had maybe some of the promoters who actually had the rights to certain wrestlers. They will loan another organization or another territory that wrestler so they can bring in revenue to that particular area. But Hulk Hogan, he ended up leaving WWF, going to New Japan, went to AWA, but then you have Vince McMahon. Yeah, that Vince McMahon, the one we know today. He decided he wanted to break away from the territories. He wanted to get away from that. So he wanted to put the world of professional wrestling and WWF on a global scale. So he bought the organization from his father, which he kind of told a little bit of a lie. He bought it, but his father only wish was to make sure that you just don't rock the boat with the other territory promoters, which we all know Vince McMahon ended up doing. Vince McMahon had this plan, and the focal point of this plan was to get a wrestler that would be willing to go the extra mile, one that was loaded with charisma, and one that people can look at as a role model. And that wrestler was Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan signed a deal with WWF. Vince McMahon wanted him to be the face of the WWF. This was during the 80s. And Hulk Hogan, he came back to WWF and he had a legendary run. He came back in by saving Bob Backlund. Some of you probably know who Bob Backlund is, the master of the crossface chicken wing. But Bob Backlund was one of the most premier champions of that time during the 80s. He was a great shoot wrestler, great Greco-Roman wrestler, and he was a real big fan favorite during this time. Hulk Hogan ended up coming back and saving Bob Backlund from a beatdown. And Bob Backlund kind of promoted him and said that, oh, he's not the same person. I know y'all remember him from being with Classy Freddie Blassie, but he's not with him anymore. So just because of Bob Backlund, Hulk Hogan was co-signed and he became a fan favorite. And 3 weeks later, he ended up beating the Iron Sheik for the WWF Championship for the very first time. But before that, Hulk Hogan was doing these promos talking about Hulkamania, and people wonder, like, what is Hulkamania? What is Hulkamania? So now you have the beginning stages of Hulkamania, right? You know what I'm saying? With everybody, you know what I'm saying, just go absolutely crazy every time Hulk Hogan enters a room. Music starts to play, real American, people just go crazy, and he started referring to the fans or his fans as Hulkamaniacs. So he ended up beating the Iron Sheik. He was the first man to actually get out of the camel clutch. For those that may not know what the camel clutch is when the Iron Sheik would sit on the back of his opponent, and he would grab underneath their chin and pull, and pull it back, back into his chest almost, and while the opponent is on all fours. But this move was very, very sacred because nobody ever broke out of this move. But Hulk Hogan was the first person to break out of the camel clutch, and he ended up beating Iron Sheik once again for the World Wrestling Federation Championship. And during the 80s, you had the emergence of the rock and wrestling movement, and it was led by Hulk Hogan, Captain Lou Albano, I want to say Wendy Richter. You probably know a song, "Girls Just Want to Have Fun," but Hulk Hogan, along with MTV, Captain Lou, and Wendy Richter, they were the ones that kind of brought wrestling into the spotlight. And Hulk Hogan during the 80s, he carried the ball. He carried it to the very first WrestleMania, when he wrestled, along with Mr. T. And I think they wrestled, if I'm not mistaken, Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was the main event. WrestleMania, 3, the one that stands out with Andre the Giant inside of the Silver Dome, with 93,000 fans at the time. It was a record. And also Hulk Hogan, he used to just battle some of those classic heels, man, the Ted DiBiase's, the Andre the Giants once again, the Big John Studs, the King Kong Bundy, the Earthquakes, and he was indeed the man, and he ended up like carrying the ball. And this was during a time when people didn't have ADD as wrestling fans. Hulk Hogan would have the championship for a year and a half, almost 2 years at a time, which is pretty outstanding, when you think about it. I can only imagine a guy having that championship for a year in modern day wrestling. I mean, fans would just turn their heads and roll their eyes and be like, "Oh man, he's a champion again." But this was during a time when being a champion was indeed a big deal, and if you dethrone a champion, it was a huge deal. But Hulk Hogan, he carried the ball throughout the 80s, and then as we transitioned to the 90s, you started to see a little bit of a shift. People started to get Hulkamania fatigue just a tad bit. So you had a wrestler by the name of the Ultimate Warrior. Some of you probably know the Ultimate Warrior is. I'm pretty sure if you do, if you're watching this, the Ultimate Warrior, he was kind of similar to Hulk Hogan. Big, tall, muscled up. Had the face paint, electrifying music. He was known for running to the ring, shaking the ropes, a lot of excitement. His matches were quick, and Vince McMahon decided to do something that has never been done in the world of professional wrestling. At WrestleMania 6 in the Sky Dome in Toronto, Canada, you had two baby faces battle it out for the Intercontinental and the WWF Championship. This was the first time this has ever happened. during the time of wrestling, you normally would see a good guy versus a bad guy. But you had the Ultimate Warrior, who was a good guy, and you had Hulk Hogan, who was a good guy. They battled for the championship, and the Ultimate Warrior ended up winning the WWF Championship from Hulk Hogan. So you had a passing of the torch, if you will, from Hulk Hogan to the Ultimate Warrior, but it really didn't pan out that way, the way that Vince McMahon wanted it to go. Because unlike Hulk Hogan, the Ultimate Warrior didn't really have a really strong work ethic. He wasn't, quote unquote, one of the boys. And people really just didn't like the Ultimate Warrior, the way he carried himself. He felt entitled. Hulk Hogan had a respect for the business, and some people felt that the Ultimate Warrior did not. Okay, so when they did pass the torch, things started to kind of go down a tad bit when it comes to the Ultimate Warrior carrying the charge. But Hulk Hogan still, was still around, wasn't wrestling on a full-time basis. He was doing some outside projects like acting and stuff like that. But he ended up coming back, in wrestling periodically. And I remember at WrestleMania, if I'm not mistaken, I want to say WrestleMania 9, he came back and he wrestled Yokozuna, like in a last minute match, right? So you had Yokozuna taking on Bret the Hitman Hart, right? And the match ended between Yokozuna and Bret Hart is when Mr. Fuji, who managed Yokozuna, threw some salt in the eyes of Bret the Hitman Hart. Bret the Hitman Hart ended up getting pinned by Yokozuna, and Hulk Hogan comes out to the ring to try to help Bret the Hitman Hart. So Mr. Fuji gets on the mic and tells Hulk Hogan to get in the ring. You can wrestle my Yokozuna right now. So he gets into the ring and he puts the big boot and the big leg on Yokozuna. He wins the World Wrestling Federation Championship. And I can just remember that because he was wearing one of the biggest shiners that I ever seen in my entire life. A huge black eye. I can just remember him, winning that match with that huge black eye. But Hulk Hogan, he ended up carrying a belt all the way to the King of the Ring, which was in the summertime. And he ended up dropping the championship to Yokozuna for the end of his, I guess you could say, his second stint, because he was in WWF at the time. But he ended up leaving and moving on, and he ended up moving on because, like I said before, Hulk Hogan felt that, fans were kind of turning their eyes to him. People were kind of tired of Hulkamania, tired of the whole saying your prayers and eating your vitamins, blase. The world was starting to change, and that kind of talk, being the white meat baby face, as Stone Cold Steve Austin would say, that was becoming passé. So Hulk Hogan ended up leaving the WWF and signing a huge mega deal with WCW. And it started because Ric Flair had a conversation with Eric Bischoff, who was running WCW at the time. Ric Flair actually organized a meeting between Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan made a deal because most of the WCW stuff was in the South and around Florida, and Hulk really didn't want to move around that much. He was happy where he was. He made a lot of money, especially, his time during the 80s. And he just wanted to kind of just chill. And, WCW made him an offer he couldn't refuse. So he ended up coming to WCW. He ended up having this big high-profile match versus World Heavyweight Champion at the time, Ric Flair. He beats Ric Flair for the WCW Championship. And you had some of the most quirky stuff, and like when he first got there, he was carrying a ball, he was doing a good job, but I mean, it was just so lame, some of the stuff that he was doing. I can just remember his feud with the Dungeon of Doom. That was Kevin Sullivan, Hulk Hogan's one of his good friends, Brutus the Barber Beefcake, who was known as the Butcher at the time, and it was Big John Tenta, who you probably know as Earthquake, who was playing a role now as the Shark. And I can just remember them talking to this great sorcerer guy. They would go to this place that they had all white around and stuff like that. And this guy was sitting in a chair talking about he wanted to destroy Hulkamania. It was just so lame at the time. I can just remember being a 7, 8 year old kid just watching a Dungeon of Doom. Like, come on, man, this is whack. But anyway, Hulk Hogan, white meat babyface WCW champion at the time. People were like, I ain't really feeling this, man. So we fast forward all the way to about 1996. I want to say 96, okay? And you had two guys that were free agents who left WWF to come to WCW. That was Big Daddy Cool Diesel, known as Kevin Nash, and you had Razor Ramon, who was known, as Razor Ramon was Scott Hall. So they end up leaving WWF to go to WCW, and they came in. A lot of people thought that this was like the first invasion, right? Because these guys made a name for themselves in WWF and not in WCW, and they didn't explain why these guys were here. They didn't even use their names. So they ended up talking about how they were going to take over the company, and they had a third man, and nobody knew who the third man was. So it started out, the people that were leading the charge for WCW was the Macho Man Randy Savage, it was Sting, and it was Lex Luger. And they were supposed to take on Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and the third man. So good solid match, good I want to say a 5-man match. It wasn't a 6-man match at the time, but all of a sudden, you have the outsiders, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, what they were known in WCW. They were getting the best of Sting, Macho Man, Lex Luger. And all of a sudden, out comes Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan dressed in, his classic red and yellow. He comes out there. Everybody goes crazy at the Bash at the Beach pay-per-view. He comes down to the ring, and, you have Macho Man on the ground, and you have the outsider, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, just looking at him. And all of a sudden, he goes to the turnbuckle and just drops the big leg on Macho Man Randy Savage and just turns the entire wrestling world upside down, man. For the first time ever, we have the most classic babyface that you're ever going to find, Hulk Hogan, dropping a leg down on his best friend, Macho Man Randy Savage, from his Mega Power days. And you have now the biggest heel in wrestling, okay? And he helps form one of the best factions of all time, the NWO, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and Hulk Hogan. And Hulk Hogan, he did a really good job as a heel. I can arguably say that Hulk Hogan, you can't really, you never really ever see anything like this. It's usually a guy is a great baby face and not a great heel, or a great heel and not a great baby face. For example, like Randy Orton, right? Randy Orton is a classic heel, okay? He's a really good heel. If he's a baby face, it's not going to work. Hulk Hogan may possibly go down in history as one of the greatest baby faces of all time and one of the greatest heels of all time. But the NWO, they was running wild in WCW, doing the classic attacks with the spray paint on the back of their opponents after they beat them down, spray painting NWO on the back, NWO on side of 18-wheeler trailers and stuff like that. And everybody thought it was so cool, man. I'm pretty sure like everybody during this time had an NWO t-shirt. But, Hulk Hogan carried WCW, the NWO. They kind of, had a great line of momentum until everybody seemed to want to be in the NWO. It was like a running joke at the time. It seemed like they had more people in the NWO than they actually had in WCW. So, and then it got to a point where the NWO disbanded, dismantled itself and had a spinoff called the Wolfpack, which was the red and black, which I'm like, okay, man, it was getting ridiculous at this time. But, Hulk Hogan, like I said, he is the leader of the NWO as far as I'm concerned. That was when they had their best run. So Hulk Hogan, he ended up leaving, a little bit, time later. He had some beef with Vince Russo, who was actually running WCW at the time. I can remember, this classic moment when Jeff Jarrett came down to the ring and laid down in the middle of the ring. And Hulk Hogan just pinned him or whatever like that. And I remember Hulk Hogan got on the mic and said, "This is the reason why this wrestling organization is in a crapper right now." And he ended up pinning, Jeff Jarrett. After the 3 count, Jeff Jarrett just got up and walked to the back. They gave Hulk Hogan that championship. Vince Russo comes out to the ring, says, "You'll never see that, such and such ever again." It's still a debate to this day. Was that an actual shoot moment, or would they, just, messing with us? I mean, it still gets talked about to this day. So it ended up, Hulk Hogan ended up leaving WCW on pretty much a bad note. He had like a little comeback where he came back with the red and yellow, but I don't really count that. So then you had Hulk Hogan moving on, doing some outside projects, doing different things, reality shows and stuff like that during the time, little cameos. And then finally, you had Vince McMahon, who seemed like he was going through a nervous breakdown doing promos on SmackDown. And he was saying stuff like, well, nobody's going to kill my creation. The only one's going to kill my creation. And then you see in the mirror, he turns his face to the camera, and you can see the back of his chair through the mirror, and it has the words NWO. And everybody just goes crazy, right? Because the NWO finally was going to come to the WWF, or now known as the WWE. So Hulk Hogan, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash comes out and doing a pay-per-view, and they say that they're not there to kill WWE or anything like that. And you see them having these little run-ins with some of the top stars in WWE, The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin. And, it was just classic stuff. Hulk Hogan had an up and down moments with his comeback with WWE. He had a really good match, I think we all know, with The Rock. I mean, that was a legendary match right there. Really, it was just one of those, flip moments, right? The Rock comes into the match as a baby face. He leaves as a heel. Hulk Hogan comes into the match as a heel, leaves as a baby face. It was just the fact that people didn't want to see Hulk Hogan as NWO Hulk Hogan. They had enough of that. They wanted to see Hulk Hogan as Hulkamania Hulk Hogan. So the crowd basically brought back the red and yellow Hulk Hogan. And he comes back, and he had a really good run. I mean, he ended up winning the Undisputed Championship, I think from Triple H. And, he did some good things, He had some really good matches during that time. I can remember his match with The Undertaker. I can remember his match once again with Triple H, and also helped, a young Brock Lesnar along the way, try to solidify himself. So Hulk Hogan really did an outstanding job, with his third run with WWE. And now, you see Hulk Hogan in modern times. You see Hulk Hogan come back every now and then. There was some controversies, surrounding Hulk Hogan. There was a video that came out, not that video. I'm pretty sure some of y'all, not the Bubba the Love Sponge stuff, but there was some controversial content of him talking about how he didn't want his daughter to date a black guy, right? And him, dropping in the N-bomb or whatever. So you had a lot of African American wrestlers who really didn't want to talk or affiliate with Hulk Hogan in any way, shape, or form. So the WWE kind of disassociated themselves from Hulk Hogan. Finally, a couple of years later, he comes back after they have a conversation with some of their well-known African American wrestlers. So they said it was okay for him to come back, and now Hulk Hogan comes back every now and then. He's a two-time Hall of Famer, once as himself and also with a faction of the NWO. How will Hulk Hogan be remembered? In my opinion, Hulk Hogan will be remembered as one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. He will be known as one of the greatest baby faces of all time. Like I said, he would be known as one of the greatest heels of all time. He is the guy that put wrestling on the map. Regardless if you like Hulk Hogan or not, he is the one that put wrestling on the map. You have a lot of wrestlers out there that have axe to grind with Hulk Hogan. A lot of people felt like Hulk Hogan didn't help out a lot of the wrestlers out there. He was so focused on having his spot being the guy that, you know, he didn't really lose a lot of matches. He didn't want to put people over. For those that don't know what that means that if you have a young up and coming wrestler with a lot of potential, you'll actually have a guy that solidifies himself, end up losing to that up and coming wrestler. You rarely ever seen Hulk Hogan do that. You know, but all in all, you know, Hulk Hogan was necessary in the world of wrestling. You know, to me, he's the Michael Jordan of professional wrestling. You don't get any better than Hulk Hogan. I grew up as a Hulk Hogan fan. I was more of a Macho Man Randy Savage fan, more so than Hulk Hogan. I was a little bit of Ultimate Warrior fan. You know, I liked him more than Hulk Hogan. I was actually, you know, I was probably like 3 or 4 during that time. You know what I'm saying? Well, Hulk Hogan and Hulkamania was pretty much running wild. So I really didn't have a huge appreciation for what Hulk Hogan was actually doing because, I mean, I probably was on the floor somewhere trying to spin around in a circle. But, you know, I started to have an appreciation for Hulk Hogan like during the time of the you know, the WCW days, the Dungeon of Doom, and the NWO Hulk Hogan. You know, but like I said, he's going to go down in history as one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. I say wrestlers, you know, I say that very tongue in cheek. We all know that Hulk Hogan wasn't the greatest wrestler of all time. Probably had about 5 or 6 moves. I mean, 5 or 6 moves. Okay, but I'm talking about as far as him just putting the world of professional wrestling out there for everybody to try to grab onto. He was a larger than life character. We know about the classic tearing of the shirt, right? We know about the curtain call. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I'm saying? Putting the hand to the ear. You know, we know about that. We know about the Real American theme. You know what I'm saying? People just go crazy when he comes out there. And, you know, like I said, other wrestlers, former wrestlers have their opinions about Hulk Hogan. But me as a fan, I would say that Hulk Hogan is one of the greatest of all time. But I would love to know what you have to say about Hulk Hogan. What do you think about the Immortal Hulk Hogan? What is one of your favorite matches that involved Hulk Hogan? Comment down below, like and share this video. This has been the TJ Knows Wrestling Podcast. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com. Search TJ Knows Wrestling Podcast. Also, check the TJ Knows Podcast, TJ Knows Wrestling Podcast on Facebook, facebook.com. Search TJ Knows Wrestling. Till next time, I'll see you down the road.